There is a specific kind
This
of
can't
silence
be
that
happening.
fills a house the night before a wedding.
I have to face
Not
it.
peaceful silence. Not the kind that wraps around you like a blanket. This is the silence that sits on your chest. The kind that makes every creak in the floorboard sound like a warning. Damian Wisdom knew that silence well by the time he was 41 years old. He had spent 20 years building a life that looked spotless from the outside. A logistics company he built from scratch. A reputation in his community that people admired. A fiancée named Diana who everyone agreed was exactly the kind of woman a man like Damian deserved. Thoughtful. Warm. Church-going. Patient. The kind of woman people called a blessing. And tomorrow morning, inside a beautiful venue on the outskirts of Charlotte, North Carolina, Damian was going to become her husband. But at 1:47 in the morning, while everyone slept and the rain hit the guest house windows in slow steady sheets, Damian was standing very still in a hallway he should not have been standing in. Because the door in front of him was half open. And the woman inside was not his bride. Her name was Rose. Diana's younger sister. 24 years old. And the moment she looked up and saw him standing there, something shifted in the air between them that Damian would spend the next several years trying to understand. What happened in the following 12 hours did not destroy a wedding. It destroyed something far more important than that. And tonight, we are going to sit with the truth of what really happens when temptation does not knock loudly on your door, but instead finds you already standing right in front of it. Before we dive deeper, let us know in the comments where you're watching from. We'd love to hear from you. And if you're new here, click on the subscribe button so you never miss any of our upcoming videos. Damian Wisdom did not grow up easy. He was raised in a 2-bedroom apartment in East Charlotte by a mother who worked nights at a hospital laundry and a father who was present just enough to confuse him. His father was not a cruel man. He was simply absent in the way that some men are absent even when they are standing right in front of you. He showed up for dinner but never for conversations. He was there for birthdays but never for report cards. And so from a very young age, Damian learned that the only person he could count on completely was himself. That lesson became the foundation of everything he built. By 23 he had his CDL license and a single delivery truck. By 28 he had a staff of 14 and a contract with 3 regional hospital systems. By 35 his company, Wisdom Logistics, was operating across 4 states and he had his name on a building lease in uptown Charlotte. He never celebrated these things. He just moved to the next problem. Discipline was not something Damian practiced. It was something he had become. And then he met Diana Churchill at a fundraiser for a youth mentorship program 2 years ago. She was standing near the back of the room talking to an elderly woman who could barely hear, leaning close, laughing at something the woman said, completely unbothered by the noise around her. Damian had been to 100 events like this. He had smiled at 100 women. But something about Diana's stillness stopped him. She did not look like someone performing kindness. She just looked like someone who was kind. They talked for 2 hours that evening. He asked for her number. She gave it to him without hesitation. 6 months later he told her he was falling in love with her. 8 months after that he proposed over a quiet dinner at her favorite restaurant. She cried. He did not, but he wanted to. The wedding was planned for the last Saturday in May. 112 guests. A rooftop ceremony. White roses. A jazz quartet. Everything Diana had dreamed of since she was a little girl. Damian told people that meeting Diana had changed him. And that was true. But the part he never said out loud was that it had also revealed something he had not expected. That for all his discipline and all his control, he was still deeply lonely. Not the dramatic kind of lonely that makes people call their friends at midnight. The quiet kind. The kind that lives in the space between 2 people who love each other but have never quite figured out how to reach each other all the way. Diana loved him. He had no doubt about that. But there were moments when he looked at her across a dinner table and felt miles away. He never spoke about it. He told himself it was just the stress of building a life together. He told himself it would pass. Rose Churchill was 24 years old and she had been living in her older sister's shadow since the day she understood what shadows were. Diana was the good one. Diana was the responsible one. Diana finished college in 3.5 years, worked her way into a marketing director role by 32, and never once gave their parents a reason to worry. And Rose loved her sister. Genuinely. But love and resentment are not opposites. They can live inside the same heart, side by side, without cancelling each other out. And for most of her life, Rose had carried both. She had changed her major 4 times. She had moved 3 times in 5 years. She had dated men who were good for her and men who absolutely were not, and she had not always chosen wisely. Her parents never screamed at her for any of this. They did not need to. The quiet disappointment was louder. The polite comparisons. The gentle suggestions. Diana found a good man. Diana is so settled now. You'll figure it out eventually, sweetheart. Eventually. That word had followed Rose her entire life like a quiet insult. And then Damian arrived. And for the first few months, Rose felt nothing particular about him. He seemed nice enough. Serious. Professional. Maybe a little too controlled for her taste. But over time she began to notice small things. The way he actually listened when people spoke, not just waiting for his turn but actually tracking what was being said. The way he looked sometimes when he thought no one was watching him. Tired. Not physically. Something deeper. Like a man who had been carrying something for a very long time and had simply gotten used to the weight. She noticed the moments when Diana talked and Damian went slightly quiet. Not dismissive. Just somewhere else. And Rose understood that look because she had worn it herself. It was the look of someone who felt unseen even when they were surrounded by people who claimed to love them. She never said any of this out loud. She pushed it away every time it surfaced. She told herself she was projecting. She told herself she was inventing stories. But feelings that are pushed away do not disappear. They just go underground. The week before the wedding, the entire Churchill family and Damian's closest friends gathered at a rented countryside estate outside Charlotte to celebrate. Rehearsal dinner. Pre-wedding photos. Family dinners that ran 3 hours longer than planned. Laughter echoing through the hallways. Champagne at 10 in the morning. The kind of overwhelming, beautiful, suffocating closeness that only weddings create. And inside all of that warmth and noise, something cold and quiet was taking shape between Damian and Rose, something that neither of them chose, neither of them invited, and neither of them was fully prepared to resist. It started 3 nights before the ceremony at the rehearsal dinner. Damian was outside on the back porch taking a moment alone when Rose came out. She said she needed air. He said the same. They stood side by side for a while not saying much. She made a comment about how nervous Diana seemed. He laughed and said Diana had planned this wedding so precisely that she had nothing to be nervous about. Rose looked at him sideways. "Are you nervous?" she asked. He was quiet for a moment. "A little," he said. She nodded slowly. "Me too," she said. And the strangeness of that answer sat in the air between them. She was nervous for her sister's wedding. But the word "me too" had come out of her mouth like she meant something else entirely, and both of them felt it, and neither of them addressed it, and they went back inside. 2 nights before the wedding, during a late dinner, Diana got a phone call from her maid of honor about a last-minute problem with the flower arrangements and she stepped away from the table for 20 minutes. Which left Damian sitting beside Rose in the warm, noisy dining room while everyone else talked around them. Rose poured herself another glass of wine and said very quietly, without looking at him, "She talks about you like you saved her life, you know." Damian looked at her. Diana. She says you're the most steady person she's ever met. Something tightened in his chest. I try to be, he said. Rose turned and looked at him directly. Do you ever get tired of trying? The table erupted in laughter at something someone else said and the moment dissolved, but the question stayed inside him for the rest of the evening. Do you ever get tired of trying? It was such a specific question. Too specific to be casual. He went to bed that night and lay awake longer than he should have. The night before the wedding, Damian could not sleep. The rain had started around midnight. He lay in his room for an hour staring at the ceiling. At 1:30 in the morning he got up, pulled on a t-shirt, and walked down the quiet hallway toward the kitchen because he wanted water and something to occupy his hands. The hallway was dark except for a thin line of warm light coming from a door that was not fully closed. He slowed as he passed it. He should have kept walking. He knows that now. He will tell you that now. But instead he stopped. And through the half-open door he saw Rose sitting on the edge of the bed. She was wearing an oversized white shirt. Her hair was down. She was holding her phone but not looking at it. She looked like someone sitting with a thought they could not put down. She looked up and saw him standing there. Neither of them moved. Neither of them spoke. The rain was loud against the window. And then she said, quietly, "You can't sleep either." It was not a question. He pushed the door slightly wider. "No," he said. And he stepped inside. What happened in that room in the next 40 minutes was not physical. Damian will be clear about that. There was no kiss. There was no touch. But what happened was, in certain ways, more intimate than either of those things. They talked. Quietly, honestly, the way people only talk in the middle of the night when their defenses have been worn down by exhaustion and something too heavy to carry alone. She told him she felt like a ghost at her own family's most important events. He told her he understood loneliness more than he had ever told Diana. She told him she had feelings for him that she had tried for months to bury. He did not say he felt the same. But he did not deny it either. And in the silence after she said it, Damian sat there and felt something he had not felt in a very long time. Seen. Understood. Not loved, not in the right way, but truly looked at. And that is a dangerous thing to feel when you are already lonely. He stood up after a while. He told her this could not happen. She nodded. She said she knew that. She said she was not asking him to choose anything. She was just tired of pretending she felt nothing. He stood in the doorway for a moment and he looked at her, and for one terrible breath he did not move. Then he stepped back into the hallway. He pulled the door closed behind him. He walked back to his room. He sat on the edge of his own bed and pressed his hands against his face and stayed like that for a very long time. This is the part of the story where we need to pause and ask each other something honest. Have you ever found yourself in a moment where you were not doing anything wrong, and yet you knew you were already standing too close to something dangerous? Have you ever felt seen by the wrong person at the exact moment you needed to be seen? And what does that say about us, not as people who are weak, but as people who are human? If this story has already pulled something out of you, drop a comment below and tell me what you're thinking. Sometimes the most powerful stories are the ones that make us look inward. Stay with me, because this is where the story takes a turn that no one saw coming. Damian did not sleep again that night. When the sun came through the curtains at 6:15 in the morning, he was already sitting in the chair by the window watching it rise. He showered. He dressed. He looked at himself in the bathroom mirror for longer than usual. He did not like everything he saw. Not because of what had happened. Because of how close he had come to wanting more than what had happened. That gap, the distance between what he almost did and what he actually did, felt both vast and terrifyingly small at the same time. The morning moved fast the way wedding mornings always do. Caterers arriving. Photographers setting up. Diana's mother crying already before 9 o'clock. His groomsmen making terrible jokes in the room down the hall. And Diana. Diana in her suite with her bridesmaids, laughing, glowing, the happiest Damian had seen her in months. He saw her briefly around 10 when she called him over just to tell him she loved him, and she was so ready. She held his hand. Her eyes were full. And Damian looked at his bride and felt something collapse and rebuild inside him at the same time. But then he saw Rose across the courtyard. She was standing near the rose arch that had just been set up, wearing her bridesmaid dress, holding a cup of coffee with both hands, looking at nothing in particular. She must have felt him watching because she looked up. And the look she gave him was not flirtatious. It was not hopeful. It was something sadder than both of those things. It was the look of someone who has already accepted an outcome they cannot change. She gave him a small, quiet nod. Then she looked away and walked toward the bridal suite. He stood there for a moment. Then he straightened his jacket and walked toward the ceremony. What none of the guests saw that morning, what Diana would not find out about for almost 8 months, was what happened in a quiet moment backstage before the processional began. Rose found Damian alone in a small anteroom. She closed the door. She looked at him with an expression he could not read. And then she said something that shook him more than anything else from the night before. She said, "I want you to know that last night was the last time I'm going to let myself feel that way. Not because I have to. Because I choose to." He stared at her. She continued. "Diana has chosen you. And you've chosen her. And if I respect my sister at all, I have to respect what that means." Her voice was steady. Her eyes were not. "I'm moving to Denver in 3 weeks," she said. "I already accepted a position there. I haven't told anyone yet. But I needed you to know that I'm choosing to remove myself. Not because you asked me to. Because it's the right thing." Damian felt something press against the back of his throat. He could not find words. She put her hand briefly on his arm. Not romantically. The way you touch someone when you are saying goodbye to something. Then she turned and walked out to take her place in the bridal lineup. Damian stood alone in that anteroom for 90 seconds. He took 3 long, slow breaths. And then he walked out to stand at the altar and wait for his bride. Diana Churchill walked down that aisle to the sound of a live jazz quartet playing something soft and unhurried, and when Damian saw her, every complicated thing inside him went still. She was breathtaking. But it was not just the dress or the flowers in her hair. It was the look on her face. Pure, unguarded joy. The kind of joy you only see on people who have no idea they're being watched. The kind that cannot be performed. Damian felt the weight of the past 18 hours press against him as he watched her walk toward him. He thought about the chair by the window at 6 in the morning. He thought about Rose's words in the anteroom. He thought about all the ways he had almost let himself fall into something that would have hollowed out everything he had worked to build. And then Diana reached him. She took his hand. And she said very quietly, just for him, "There you are." 2 words. But they hit him like something ancient. There you are. Like she had always known where to find him, even in the places he tried to hide. The ceremony was everything Diana had wanted. Tears from both mothers. Laughter during the vows when Damian fumbled the ring. A first kiss that the photographer caught perfectly with the golden afternoon light coming through the arched windows. And at the reception, when the jazz quartet slipped into something slow and Damian and Diana swayed together on the dance floor, he held her tighter than usual. She noticed. "You okay?" she asked into his shoulder. "Yeah," he said. And for the first time in a long time, he meant it completely. Not because everything was perfect. Because he had stood at the edge of something destructive and chosen to step back. And that choice, quiet and invisible to everyone else in the room, felt more important than anything he had built with his hands. Rose danced at the reception. She smiled. She gave a toast that made Diana cry and the whole room laugh. She hugged her sister longer than usual when she said goodnight. Nobody noticed that when Rose walked out to her car that evening, she sat in the driver's seat for several minutes before turning the key. Nobody saw that. Just her. 3 weeks later, true to her word, she moved to Denver. She called Diana every Sunday. She never told Diana what happened the night before the wedding. And neither did Damian. Now, before you decide how to feel about that, I want to ask you something directly. Do you think Damian and Rose did the right thing by not telling Diana? Or do you believe that the people we love deserve the truth, even the truths that would hurt them? Sit with that for a moment. Because there is no clean answer. And the fact that there is no clean answer is exactly what makes this story real. Damian and Diana have been married for 4 years now. They have a daughter named Avery who was born 14 months after the wedding and who, according to everyone who meets her, has Diana's calm eyes and Damian's stubborn chin. Damian built a second facility for Wisdom Logistics in Raleigh 18 months ago. Diana got promoted to vice president of marketing for a regional healthcare firm. On paper and in truth, their life is good. Not perfect. Real life is never perfect. There were months in year 2 of their marriage when they struggled to communicate, when the loneliness Damian had always carried came back quietly and they had to work through it together in ways that were uncomfortable and necessary. They went to couples counseling for 6 months. Diana's idea. And it helped. It genuinely helped. They learned to reach each other in the places they had always kept guarded. Rose built a life in Denver. She found a therapist within her first month there and did work she had been avoiding for years. She started dating someone 18 months ago, a man named Jordan who, by all accounts, is exactly the kind of person she had always deserved but had never quite let herself choose before. She and Diana speak regularly. She came back for Avery's first birthday. She and Damian were cordial and warm and careful, the way 2 people can be when they have navigated something together that they have both chosen to put behind them. There was a moment, just once, when Rose was holding baby Avery and looked up at Damian across the room and something passed between them. Not longing. Not regret. Just the quiet acknowledgement that life had turned out better than either of them had almost allowed it to. And Damian, who still wakes early and still runs his company with the same discipline that defined him before Diana, still thinks sometimes about that night. Not with guilt anymore. He did not act on what he felt. But he thinks about it because it taught him something that no amount of business success or community respect had ever taught him. He learned that discipline is not protection. You can be the most controlled person in the room and still find yourself standing in the wrong hallway at the wrong time. What protects you is not control. It is the choice you make in the moment when control has already started to slip. That is where character lives. Not in the easy moments. In the hard ones. He told a younger man this once, a cousin who was struggling in his engagement, who had admitted something he was ashamed of. Damian listened carefully. Then he said something simple. The test is never whether you feel tempted. Everybody feels tempted by something at some point. The test is what you do in the first 5 seconds after you realize you're standing somewhere you shouldn't be. The younger man looked at him quietly. And what if you already went further than 5 seconds? Damian thought about that for a moment. Then the next 5 seconds still matter, he said. They always still matter. And that, more than anything else in this story, is what I want you to take with you tonight. Not the temptation. Not the near miss. Not the drama of a wedding almost derailed. But that idea. That the next 5 seconds always still matter. No matter how far you think you've already gone. No matter how late you think it is. There is always a hallway you can still walk back down. Always a door you can still close. Always a choice waiting on the other side of the one you almost made. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think Damian handled the situation with integrity, or do you believe that keeping a secret like that from a spouse is its own form of betrayal? And what about Rose? Was choosing to move away an act of love for her sister, or was it simply the easier path for herself? Drop your thoughts in the comments below. I genuinely read every single one. Because stories like this one, stories that don't have a clean villain or a perfect hero, stories that sit in the complicated middle of human experience, those are the stories that stay with us. Those are the stories that make us look at our own lives and ask the questions we usually avoid. Where are you standing right now? And is the door in front of you one you should walk through, or one you should quietly close? Subscribe if this story moved you, because every week we bring you true accounts of love, loyalty, temptation, and the moments that define who we are when no one is watching. The next story involves a woman who vanished the night before her wedding, and the letter her daughter found hidden in the floorboards of an old church 22 years later. You are not going to want to miss that one.